recording. Okay, guys. So good evening, everyone. Let's pick up where we left off the other day, last week. I hope you guys had a nice long weekend. so as usual, we're gonna try to go over some nice topics on biology. But this particular one has some elements that are even more general. Because today we talk about briefly after this, we're going to be talking about the scientific method, which is a topic that applies to most branches of science. All right, it's not only biology, so it's a topic that I'm sure that some of you are going to go back to at some point because it's important. You are going to need the scientific method for whatever thing that you are pursuing in life. Reports, theses of different type research projects, so you're gonna need it, right? So just in the way to introduce that, let's say that around 1.8 million species have been identified and named to date, and thousands more are identified each year, despite the fact that deforestation is growing, you know but there are so many species of small size that are being discovered as we speak. And I'm talking about mollusks and frogs and insects, small animals in general. Most of the large ones are already identified and described to science, but there are many small ones yet to be described to science. So the estimations are around 10 million species, right? To some people say 100, maybe 100 is an overestimation, but 10 is pretty fair. From 10 to maybe a bit more. And from that 1.8 million species that you're looking at, 1.1.2, 1.3 is arthropods. Are you guys familiar with the word arthropods? You know what I'm talking about when I said arthropods? Anyone? What would be that, Jesus? What what groups encompasses this label of arthropods? You don't have to mention all, some. No, we are talking about invertebrates, not vertebrates. Frogs are vertebrates, like fish and mammals. All those are groups of vertebrate animals. Mm, well, some of them are sea creatures, but some are not. I would say that let me think. Maybe there is a percentage of arthropods that are sea creatures. Yes, that is a sea creature, but it's not. They have an exoskeleton, but just keep in mind that arthropods encompass insects, and most, if not all, insects are terrestrial. So I think that let me see if I can come up with a number. I think that around 80% of arthropods are terrestrial. Of course, there are some marine groups like these nice group of animals, horseshoe crabs and shrimps, lobsters. All those guys are marine, right? So you're clear. They have these external skeleton. They have joint appendages, kind of a solid skeleton. So it's a pretty diverse group, and they are widely used. I mean, they have a it's a pretty important group in terms of its economic importance. Some are have a positive importance, like the ones that we eat, the ones that I like to call the good ones, like basically crustaceans. Some insects are eaten, although it's not like in some places some insects are eaten, but some of them are important because they are plagues of different crops, so they are important in a negative way, right? So we have to deal with them using biological control or pesticides, you see. So there is usually a positive side to things and a negative one, right? So 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 taxonomy is the branch of biology that names and classifies species into groups of increasing breadth. So in our case, our current system is organized from domains down all the way down to species. I got a picture for you here to see, and this is also one of my key topics because at the beginning of my career, guys, I was a taxonomist. It's a topic that is always a subject of debate because there is another science that is called systematic that encompasses um, that is closely related to taxonomy, right? So some people like to say taxonomy, some other people like to say systematics. So it's close. And let me show you guys the well, this is not the one that I was looking for. This is basically to illustrate the different categories from domain down. Is important to increase in breadth. Um, oh, okay. Okay, so increasing breadth means, the let me show. This is the whole classification pyramid. Guys, the only natural category that you are gonna find there is a species, right? Everything else is a creation of man. Is a creation of science. So we've put together all those categories in order to organize, classify, and understand animals and plants and fungi and some other groups. So the only natural category, the one that is at the base of all this pyramid, if you see the pyramid upside down, right? The one that is at the base of it is a species. Species are individuals that are able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. This is in one of the topics that I do for the 2011. Starting off with the concept of a species, which is this: individuals that live in a population are able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. And check out that I'm saying two things because sometimes, individuals closely related, like for example, individuals belonging to the same genus or same family, are able to interbreed, but they do not produce fertile offspring. You know, I'm sure you've heard names like the mule, or more recently the liger, the tiger, you know, roller. They're different hybrids. So they come from related species that are able to interbreed, but the offspring that they produce is not able to produce offspring. Is not fertile, right? So we gotta keep that in mind. We as individuals belonging to the same species have to meet these two requirements. They have to be able to interbreed and produce offspring that are fertile, are able to produce offspring themselves. Are we clear with that? So all these other categories, like genus, family, order, class, phylum, kingdoms, and domains, are creations of man, of science, that we do in order to structure, to analyze, life. Otherwise, it would be a mess. And this is what it means. What means groups of increasing breadth, Viviana. And and if you this is kind of a dissection of of the classification for a given organism. As a matter of fact, a bear, Ursus americanus. And but if you look up, at the level of domains, this is what we got. I think this is my best slide for that, which is also one of my key topics. This is what we got. We got the system that we're currently using has 3 domains, um, bacteria and archaea, which are prokaryotes, and eukarya, which are eukaryotes, right? These are the current domains that we have. This is a system that is being reconsidered, basically because of this. Basically, guys, because of this group. Okay. All the others are not being like, like reconsidered, because the other groups that these kingdoms contain are pretty clear. But this is a system that was introduced in the early 2000s. Before that, what we had was another system. We moved from system to system as you gain knowledge. Let me say that there are different types. There are different types of biology. Some people do research. People who do research usually do teaching, right? Like me. Some other people do the books. That you use, the textbooks that you use. They collect information to put together. You've seen your books. Your books on biology are like, it's the amount of information that they contain is pretty impressive. So there is a group of people that work with another level of people, like, so people providing support to them, that are in charge of putting together the books. And those guys usually work for big houses like Pearson, McGraw, and some others. And there is another group of people who are doing different type of research, which are the ones that are usually uh, reclassifying and producing this type of chart that are called tree-like diagrams, which are the ones that we use to classify living organisms. You are going to see tree-like diagrams at different points in the course, and this course is not that. I mean, in this course they are not that abundant, but in the 2011, this is like on a daily basis. You get tree-like diagrams because that's the point for the 2011, to discuss evolution, to discuss diversity, and you're gonna be seeing tree-like diagrams like on a daily basis, right? One after the other, one after the other. So the point is that these tree-like diagrams are made on the basis of relatedness, right? So it means that if the organisms um, contained, located in one of those kingdoms, have to have different things in common. And these are also the things that we discuss in the Bio 2011. Here, basically, my point is for you to know that these two kingdoms here are, individuals that have that are made up of individuals that exhibit um, prokaryote cells, and these are eukaryotes, which are more evolved, right? All of these guys. This group has many species that are single-celled, but the rest are usually multicellular organisms. Okay, this is more or less what we can glean out of this graph. Questions, comments? Okay, you good, Viviana? Okay, so these are comments related to these trees, so I'm gonna skip some. Okay, so so striking unity underlines the diversity of life. For example, check this one out. This is one of the topics that we are gonna go back to at some point in the course. So DNA is a universal genetic language common to all organisms. Imagine, guys, if you stop to think about this statement, this is a big deal. imagine that these groups, all of these groups, right, have the same DNA regardless of the the other characters that they have, how different they are. The structure of the DNA is the same basically, right? That is a big deal. We're talking about here in animals, for example, we're talking about animals as complex as mammals, us included, right? And here we got, for bacteria, we got pretty simple single-celled animal individuals. So, and regardless, they have the same structure in the DNA. This is a big, big deal, right? This is the type of things that I like you to meditate about because it's one of the impressive things that you will learn here in this class. And unity is evident in many features of cell structure. There's one other thing that we are going to be talking about, when we do cells, and even before that, that is another of the characteristics that underlies the unity in the diversity of life. You see that. Well, this is one. This is a structure called the cilium. One is taken from a protozoan, which is a protozoan is a protist. The kingdom that I told you is being reconsidered, and this is a cilium that is in the windpipe of mammals, and they both have the same basic structure. This is huge, right? This is totally huge. So, fossils and other evidence document the evolution of life on Earth over billions of years. This is one of my favorite topics of in biology. Fossils. I have 3 or 4. Some key ones, not a lot. And I haven't been. I've done, guys. You cannot imagine the amount of field work that I've done in my career. And I've been, in that sense, I've been unlucky because I found once a fossil of an ammonite. I think, well, it's a fossil of an octopus with a shell. There is a few living remnants of octopuses with shells, and they most of them got extinct back in the Jurassic period, together with other important groups, and they got fossilized, turned into rocks, and I like that a lot, But doing field work, I haven't come across fossils and I look, when I do field work, I look to see if I collect other things other than the things that I'm looking for, and it's not, and I don't know if this is because of this, because I sometimes browse for information on this topic that I'm getting, these short videos of people that are finding rocks in the coast, by the coastline, that when they break, it seems that you have to find rocks with a certain characteristics, but when you break them, they open and you got an ammonite inside, right? So maybe I've looked in the wrong place. I'm not sure, but it's certainly motivating to find one of those things when you're doing field work. Okay, so well, this is a picture that could be maybe not me because I'm a biologist who specializes on living organisms, and this is people doing paleontology, which is a study of fossils. But one thing that I've done many times in my life is taking students out to the field. In this particular course, I don't have many examples of it because what I usually do is, the pictures that I got, I use in either the Bio 2 or the general biology class to illustrate projects conducted on populations or communities, and we don't do that in this class. But I remember that this chapter is a review that is common for both, well, 2011, 2010, both. So moving forward, I'd like to introduce to you Charles Darwin is kind of the father to modern biology. He published a book called On the Origin of a Species by Means of Natural Selection. I have it somewhere. I don't know exactly where I have it. Maybe in some of the places that I lived. It's a book that is thick as a brick. It took Darwin like 20 years to put it together because after being in the Beagle, it's a chip from the UK Crown, the Beagle. After being there for 5 years, he came back with not so good health. I guess it is the water quality from back in the day. Imagine if nowadays you guys do field work, sometimes you you will start having issues, stomach issues, because it's not the water, guys. It's not only the water that you drink; it's also the water used to clean, the utensils and to clean the um, the plates and all that. Some people think, no, I don't know why I'm bad. I'm feeling bad because I've been always drinking purified water, but it's not that. It's not only that. It's also the fact that we need water for other things. To clean up the utensils that we used to eat, plates. And depending on the place that we take the water from, we can get issues. I think that was what happened to Darwin because he took a lot of years to him, and as a matter of fact, he was able to finally publish the book because there was another person who got to the same idea on natural selection on his own, another British scientist that wasn't living even in the UK, he was living out of New Guinea. It's an island in Asia, all the way to the east, but he was a brilliant guy. And there was one of Darwin's friend told him, Charles, you need to publish the book because this other person has the same idea, and he's not gonna wait. And they met. Darwin gave this person whose name was Alfred Russel Wallace credit for his idea in his book, and then he published the book. The book, let me tell you guys, is kind of difficult to read. Don't think it is that simple because there are pretty deep concepts explained in that book, and Darwin was the first. So in my case, I dived many times in the book trying to clean things out, and it was difficult. So for me, it was a blessing that I finally came across a book from some other biologist from the 20th century, biologist out of Harvard, who died a few years ago, who was the person that took over Darwin's words and concepts and reorganized and then republished many other things using new examples and simplified words. And I am pretty grateful to that person. In some of my PowerPoints, I got a picture of him. I'm talking about Ernst Mayr. Mayr was like a brilliant scientist, and he was never he was never my professor, but I referred to him as a professor of mine because I learned many things from his books. Okay, and you got as you saw here, you got a picture of Darwin when he was young. It's not easy. Most of the pictures that was on Darwin is when he was old already, with a long white beard. People are usually at some point of their lives are younger. So, um, so Darwin used different examples of the. Imagine that was a 5 year trip. They collected a lot. They made drawings on different things. They made observations. They even experienced an earthquake. Imagine it was a huge trip. And one of the things that Darwin learned during his trip is that species generally suit their environment. They're usually adapted to the environment. And this is pretty much how natural selection works, adapting species to the environment. This is pretty much the job of natural selection. So Darwin inferred that individuals that are best suited to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. And over time, which is the key to the whole process of natural selection, and is, as a matter of fact, what made the difference between Darwin and his contemporary Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. More individuals in a population will have the advantageous traits. The thing is that there was another scientist, there was another biologist who got to the same conclusion as Darwin, but he thought that things, changes could happen like immediately in a matter of years. Well, yes, but not. It's not. I mean, in my opinion, changes don't have to take like millions of years to happen. Sometimes they happen over hundreds of years, depending on how important those changes are, depending on the environmental pressures, but they need time. They happen over time, right? And they happen differently depending on the organisms, right? It's not the same, those changes that happen in mammals than insects, because mammals usually require more time to produce offspring. In our case, for example, it's 9 months. In some other mammals, it's more, and in some other mammals, it's less. But it's never like a day or two or weeks. It's usually more, and depending on how frequent generations are, that is going to be related to evolutionary time, right? So, so in other words, the environment selects for the propagation of beneficial traits, and that we call the process natural selection. Well, this is an example of, this is slightly modified from a previous example of a uh, of a population of a moth. This is not a moth. This is a beetle, but the example is pretty similar, and it's a classic one, an example that we use in genetics on a regular basis. It's about a population of moth in a forest in the UK in the early in the 20th century, and there was a forest there where, among other species, there was a population of moth. One with two variants. One was gray, the other one was brownish, and there was a population of birds feeding on the moth. And they built a factory next to a forest, and the factory started as all factories started to emit carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and then um, the bark color of the trees changed. So at the beginning, the color was natural. It was naturally grayish. So the brownish variant of the moth was easily visualized by the birds. So it was heavily preyed upon. And then over the years, that changed due to the smog expelled to the atmosphere of the factory, and then things changed. That variant of moth started being camouflaged by the slightly different color of the bark, and then the other one was the one that was spotted by the birds. So the final point, is that they were able to survive as a species. Exactly. It's a story related to the Industrial Revolution, Louis. As a matter of fact, you're totally right. And we that story is used in different contexts. In the context of biology, this is the point. Well, yes, but also the point that I'm trying to make, yes, the point that I'm trying to make is that eventually that species survived as a group, because of the fact that these species had a lot of genetic diversity. You see the point? And this is what is going with us, you know. The example that I gave you at the very beginning with COVID, you know, is the pressure factor is different, but the outcome is the same. Okay, so so natural selection results in the adaptation of organisms to their environment. And well, an example, one of the many that can be cited is bat wings. Guys, let me tell you that this is a real bat, right? I have all pictures of bats from one of my projects. I have a project. I have I think it's my longest. It's a project that I'm doing with a former student of mine, who is my friend, to monitor casualties on bats and birds caused by windmills. And we got pictures of bats, pretty good. But I want to keep this one because this one, I don't know if you guys agree with me. I find this bat kind of weird because to me it looks like a dog. Check out the ears and the snout. I didn't do any manipulation. Don't think I manipulated the picture with Photoshop or anything. It does look like a dog, right, Jesus? Yes. I want to keep it because of that, because it, makes me kind of happy to see it, you know. So, the unity in diversity arises from descent with modification. This is related to what we saw earlier, you know. So, for example, the forelimb of a bat, human, and horse, and the whale flipper all shares a common skeletal architecture. Fossils provide additional evidence of anatomical unity from descent with modification. Let me see if I got pictures of this. No, I don't have pictures. I these I apologize, but guys, this is a topic for the 2011. Remember that we got bits, and in the 2011 I got a chapter when I got the forelimbs of all these groups, basically to show you that when you put this hand next to a flipper of a whale or a dolphin or a manatee, right? And you take a look at the internal structure, is the same, right? I mean, both are the same internally, right? That's the point. So they have evolved. They have evolved to adapt to the environment because in the different groups of living organisms, for example, mammals, a terrestrial group, purely terrestrial. They evolved. Mammals evolved inland, but the thing is that some mammals realized there was opportunity going back to water. They started off in shallow water, but then they realized that there was more food. There was more food out, so they started not to just to kind of barely swim, but to swim. And for that to happen, the forelimbs and the hind limbs too evolved into flippers. Because it was better like that. Same for bats. They started gliding, and then eventually things improved for them, and then they were able to fly. Years. That's the point, guys. Years, over the years, right? That's how evolution works. So evolutionary relationships, as I said earlier, are often illustrated with tree-like diagrams that show ancestors and their descendants. And the example that I got here is more into one of the groups of vertebrates, birds. This is specifically Darwin's finches. All these guys that you see here are finches. It seems that I cannot draw inside that. Right? What's going on here? Let me see. Well, all these guys here are finches. We got finches here in the US, as a matter of fact, but they do not usually live in cities. They like pristine environments. So if you head west to the Everglades or north to some forest pockets that we got in other places of the peninsula, you are gonna find those guys. Some of the bigs that you see here, not like typical. I would say the typical bigs of finches are like this one and this one. Maybe, I mean, these long ones, bigs like this. Let me find. Well, these some are kind of typical. This long one is not like that typical, you know. So if you see a bird with a beak like that in a place that is not a city, it's going to be probably a finch because they exhibit a new tropical distribution. It means that you can find it in the tropics, but also in the southern end of the U.S. Remember, guys, remember that we got the southern tip of the peninsula together with the southern U.S., the southern coast U.S. It's the neotropics, right? Together with most of Latin America and the Caribbean. So we got many species in common with those other countries. Okay, so going down to a scientific method, guys, again, write this down because it's important. Remember that the only topic that I will include in other tests other than test one, all right, is the scientific method because it's important for everyone. And it's not important only for my class, it's important for other classes as well, all right? So keep it in mind. So the word science is derived from Latin and means to know. So science is a system and also a body of knowledge, and is closely related to inquiry, which is a search for information and explanation on natural phenomena. So the scientific process includes making observations, forming logical hypotheses, and testing them. No worries, I got the whole set of steps to a scientific method detailed briefly after. So, but before getting there, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite topics of biology, guys. I apologize because this is one of my favorite topics. I realize I speak a lot about it, but let me tell you this: not everyone, surely not everyone, but some of my students come back to me years after, letting me know that they had to use these comments of mine for their own work. Not probably not at the NDC, but many of my students go to other places to get bachelors like the FIU. Some people go to Tallahassee. Some people go to some people go to UF. So, and there you are going to need this. So data is what we called when we collect information, we call that type of information data. And data can be classified into different groups. Basically, these two groups that you got here, but also there is another one that people don't usually talk about, and it's important. It's not here. Let me see. I don't think I have it here because I got it in one of my lab PowerPoints, but here I didn't want to go into that much detail. But if you wanna take the note, it's fine. And talking about binary data. I don't know what's going on with me today. So binary data is the type of data that can only take a couple of states. Either the for what I do as a scientist, remember that I told you I started off working on species. This type of data is pretty important because we rely on information that you can turn into yes or no. Like there is this structure in a species, in the other species next to it, then comparing the species with this structure is not there. And that is pretty convenient to identify species. You see what I mean? If you see one thing that is there in one species, you're comparing it with other one, and that one lacks that structure, there's no doubt, right? Yes or no? That is what we call binary. You guys know computer code? Does anyone know what computer code is? Anyone? Exactly. How is that called, Maria? What type of data will be that? Exactly. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is what I'm talking about. Apart from that, we got two other types. The one that you can record, qualitative on one hand, quantitative on the other hand. Qualitative is the type of data that you can label, like color, right? That you can label. And quantitative is the type of data that you have to either, check this out, measure or count. It's two different subtypes, measure or count. You see the difference? For example, you count teeth, you measure height, right? Yes or no? You measure number of eggs in a bird, in a nest, okay? That is why I told you that this is important, because whatever project that you want to do in life requires what? Data. And guys, this pretty beautiful woman here, it's Dr. Um, let me try to remember her name. Dr. Jane Goodall is still alive. You know, it's a picture taken when she was much younger. Dr. Goodall is in her 80s, but this woman has made a huge contribution on the study of our cousins, bonobos and chimps, and also in the conservation of the forest in some countries of Africa to preserve those guys, these guys here. From her, we learned that guys, the bonobos are unique. Sort of, yeah, absolutely. But but uh, um, but she wasn't talking about bonobos. Bonobos are peaceful. They don't like war with anyone. They are peaceful. They are smart. And they are pretty close. As a matter of fact, they are tightly related to chimps, but they behave totally different. And we owe that to Dr. Godal, right? So it's, the other day I watched a video, guys, that was like so impressive. You know, she was given, yes, she did that type of things, yes. She was being given an award, and she was there with three park guards and one of his monkeys, one of his I think it was a I don't remember what was that. I think it was an bonobo. I think it was a gorilla, something like that. The thing is that the guy turned to her and hugged her, you know, in a so warm way, you know, that he was so human, you know. It was pretty impressive. The woman started to cry. Good, good that you did, Jesus. Good that you did. This is pretty important. This woman had changed, many things related to a theory of knowledge and behavior. Yeah. So in science, we're getting closer to the scientific method, right? So we are just introducing some of the components and that. So in science, a hypothesis is a well-framed scientific question. It's usually a rational accounting for a set of observations. It leads to predictions that can be tested by making additional observations or by performing experiments. So hypothesis must be testable, first of all, right? You need it's a question or work proposal that you need to prove. Once you prove it, what you get is part of the theory, becomes part of the theory. That's the whole point to a scientific method. So a scientific method is an idealized process of inquiry. So hypothesis-based science is based on the textbook scientific method, but rarely follows all the others. Guys, this is, just to say that sometimes we're kind of disorganized. When we know how to do it, when we know how to use it, it's like riding a bike, you know. But I suggest when you start off working with it, you follow steps. After that, when you master the scientific method, you can you can twist it to your own. I mean, you can work with it more or less without following the sequence of steps. But before that, before you actually master it, I suggest you follow steps and you walk through it with someone that is senior to you, because it's not that easy. As a matter of fact, I don't have time to go over the. I got examples of hypotheses here for you. I'm gonna go back to this because this is the key to all. I mean, one of the key things, the most important topics of today's lecture. But I wanted basically to show you that I got some examples of hypotheses here, right? And these hypotheses that I got you, that I selected for you guys, are more or less simple, but when you have to do them your own, when you have to formulate your own hypothesis for a given project, it's not that easy. People usually fail at doing a good hypothesis formula. Some people not. Some people don't. Some people are natural. They just sit down, because I got students of all type. And let me tell you, I taught biostatistics for 20 years of my life. I started teaching when I was pretty young, and I taught for 20 years biostatistics. So I know what I'm saying. And most people um, don't get it, you know. And some are natural. Some just, from the very beginning, they just come to me, Professor, take a look at this. They got it right. They got it right. I gave them another question to make sure, and they do it again. Some people are natural, but some have trouble because it's not. There's a manipulation of words, which is the point. The whole point is how you play with words, because one of the hypotheses must be neutral, and the other one must express what you think as a researcher. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point. Okay, so the scientific method is a process and usually starts off with observation, looking around, or reading. So it depends. And talking about and explaining this as if we were in the 19th century and we were with Isaac Newton. So, most of you know that Isaac Newton was sitting. Um, he was leaning on a tree, and then he saw an apple falling down, and he got like, because he was working on different things, and he knew for sure that things fall down here in the earth, right? Now, what was the force behind what he saw that was an apple falling down from a tree? Because in a different context, that apple could be falling up, not falling down, right? Yes or no,
Yes.
guys?
Yes.
Yes, right? It could fall up. Yes. The thing is that it falls down because of what? What is the reason that the apple falls down? What's the key word there?
Gravity.
Exactly. Exactly. And that was what Isaac Newton realized when he was looking around. And then you have to find yourselves one thing that you like, some people like it depends on your background. I mean, in your case, most of you guys pursue a path related to biology, and but there are different. There are so many, as we said at the very beginning, so many possibilities for us that you have to find yourself place there, and then start thinking about it, right? And reading. I suggest you do not only look but also read. That complements in a very important way observation. Reading. That's what I do. When I got an idea, I immediately go down and start looking, start browsing, online, Google, other browsers to see what happens, right? And then one thing that I do is I look at the end. If I find a paper that is useful for me, I search in the references, because there I'm sure I'm gonna find at least one or two sources that are gonna take me to the place that I want. You know, unfortunately, sometimes it's not easy to find the whole paper, or you have to pay for it. But many times, if you have, for example, in your case as NDC students, we got access to a pretty important um, online databases, like 3 or 4, and it's a treasure that you have to use, guys. You cannot imagine. Then, when you have things more or less clear in the observation step, you have to pose yourself a general question. Sometimes it's more than one. I'm simplifying here, right? Sometimes out of a given idea, you can pose yourself different questions. Why's, or what's, or how's. But let's keep it simple. Let's keep it to one, right? And then that general question, in order to work with it, you have to transform into a couple of practical questions that you have to answer. Those two questions, as a matter of fact, are called hypotheses, right? We good so far?
Yes.
You got examples after, right? I won't have time to dissect the examples, but you got 3 different ones. I'm going to talk about just one. And then we got one thing called the experiment. We call it that way because this all started off in labs, but we can do a lot of things outdoors. As a matter of fact, in my case, if you guys look me up online, you'll see papers of mine, books of mine. Many of them have been, are based on things that I've done outdoors. Work that I've done, working with my snails for my doctorate, or working with trees, or working with birds, or working with fish in a lake. I don't know. There's so many things outdoors. Of course, I usually at some point have to collect samples and take them to a lab for further analysis, measurements, weighing, DNA testing, things like that. But an important component of my work have been done outdoors. So that is all encased into the experiment. The experiment contains different things I would like you guys to take notes about, because it's not in a PowerPoint, okay? And in these things that I'm going to say are not usually things that I include in a test, but you might want to have them because it's probably the key that is going to open doors for you. So one of the things that you have to come up with is the sample size. So when you have questions to answer, first of all, you need to come up with a representative number of items taken from the population that are significant. I mean, that provide you with a group of individuals that give you an accurate idea of what the population is like, and that is called a significant sample, right? This is like the first line that you have to comply with after after formulating your hypothesis. And after that, you have to check, you have to design how you're gonna collect those measurements from from the environment, let's say. And the environment may be a forest, maybe a lake, but also maybe a supermarket, right? Maybe houses in a city, depending on what you want, right? So you need to sit down and find out how to collect that, how to access that sample from the population that you are interested in. And having clarified that point, before going to the field, I suggest I deeply suggest that you do this, guys, because I've been there many times already. I suggest you also make sure that you know how you're gonna process this data set that you're gonna collect on the field. And I mean the statistical tools that you're gonna use. All right. So keep that in mind. I won't be talking about this specifically in the course unless you ask me. So keep it in mind. And once you have all that clear, then you can go out or go in. It depends on whether your experiment is going to be conducted outdoors or in a lab, and then collect your information, analyze it, and depending on what, depending on this final point, if this supports your idea, right, you are going to, well, either conclusion, positive or negative, is good, guys. Let me tell you before moving forward. Some people come to me sad, actually sad, I'm not kidding, and come to me and say, Professor, I did this, I did that, as you suggested, and I got the opposite hypothesis. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. As long as you followed the steps and you did things right, whatever you got is fine. If you don't prove what you wanted to prove, it's okay. It's okay. It's part of the scientific method. All right? Keep that in mind. So you reach your conclusion, and then in case you get a positive response, body of knowledge goes to a theory. It's gonna go to improve the body of knowledge from the theory, right? And that is the difference. That is the difference between hypothesis and theory. Some people, I'm sure that you guys, 99% of you watch Netflix. If you do, pay attention to this frequently, because, guys, I think in all the series that I watched in Netflix, I've seen people saying, I got theories, you know, and the thing is that you don't got theories, you got hypotheses. If you got theories, those are already proven. There's nothing to prove, right? What you have to prove is a hypothesis. It's an open question, right? Open for testing. Okay? So I want to basically go over this one here that says this is a hypothesis taken from a course that I taught. I wasn't looking for it. I was addressed by some students, and they reached out to me. They learned that I was teaching biostatistics to some other students, and they told me they had fired their professor. I said, why do you do that? Well, because the professor was only using YouTube videos, and we wanted a real professor. And they were marketing students. And the thing is that the guy who came up with that hypothesis was a salesperson from a company that sells currently wine. And he said that based on his experience, people would take a look at the label. People who don't know much about wine, of course, not, if you find experienced people, they wouldn't pay that much attention to the label. They know what to buy. We're talking about people who's not like that experienced in that part of the industry, right? Winemaking. And he said, people pay attention to the label, and if they like it, if they think the label it's professional, it looks good, and it's not a pretty, pricey wine, they would buy it. So this is what these hypotheses are about. Usually the second one, the one that is called alternative hypothesis, the second one is the one that you formulate in the one that you think is right. And the other one that is called the null hypothesis, This would be like it's not exactly a no. It's a symbol of null, right? It's the opposite of what you think is right. So in this case, it says that the sales volume for a given product. I think this applies to everything, not only to wine. So you go to whatever supermarket you want, and people usually like to buy things that look good. You don't want to buy things that do not look good, right? From what I've seen. So I got a couple of other examples here with the same idea. This is taken from a book of a friend of mine who's a psychologist, exactly the same. You know, what he thinks is here under HA, which is alternative hypothesis, and what he thinks is not, you write under the other one, the null hypothesis, right? And this is an example on biology. This is one thing that came to me. I was doing an assessment. You know, one of the things that I do as a consultant in the Dominican Republic is a mine. It's a nickel mine down there, and it hit me in the face. You know, it was a plant with leaves that were hairy, and I know that plant from other places, and their leaves are smooth. So I got like, it seems that in this type of soil, you know, the texture of the leaves change. You know, so it was pretty nice to see that. So I said, let me write this down before I forget, because I can use this as an example with my students. So finally, for today's class, I'm not gonna talk about this, and this is an assignment for you guys, and I'm gonna be clear with you. And I never lie to my students. This is a question in the first test. It's a pretty nice example of a professor with students, you know, taking a look at a population, I mean, two populations of a species of mouse, you know, both live on different places, kind of nearby. One is kind of a prairie, and the other one is sand dunes. So the point is to see, you know, what is the why are they have different colors, you know. Mice in the sand dunes are white, and the other ones in the prairies are brownish. Read the whole example. I even like the fact of the analysis. Check out, it's a pretty simple analysis, and I even visualize myself with my students going to the field and doing something like that, because I like that type of things. If you guys like these type of things, this is the type of project that I got in my book, Ecology Papers. Simple things to prove a simple hypothesis. You know, short things, straight to the point. Okay. And then at the end, as in other cases, what do we have? Key topics, right? Read it. Remember what I said. If you got doubts, you can always reach out to me, all right? I'm not saying my doors are closed to talk about that. I'm gonna leave it to you as a homework. Comments, thoughts, anyone? Silence?
No questions.
Okay. Does it mean that we're totally lost or that we're good? Sometimes no questions means actually if you say you saying because we missed one class. Yeah, but I told you I'm gonna skip one of the chapters. There's a chapter that is not that important to me because I'm gonna be talking about carbon-based molecules all my course, so I can skip that one. Okay. All right. So let me share with you guys. I told you I haven't gotten time enough to try to do attendance in